the Swindon Works were as grand as they were gigantic. Spanning more than 300 acres and employing a small army of over 14,000 people, 3 brand new locomotives a week could be rolled out for GWR Metals. They also built thousands of carriages, wagons, and everything in between. Eventually, decline set in, leading to an unceremonious full closure in 1986. But since then, the history of this remarkable place has been painstakingly preserved for future generations to enjoy. Steam, the Museum of the Great Western Railway, opened in 2000 to royal fanfare.
Are you all trying to get in?
It serves as a poignant homage not just to the Swindon Works, but to the wider GWR as a whole. Nowadays, there are plenty of locations where you can scratch your Great Western itch. Many ex-Western lines were saved for preservation, and they're all terrific. But here's the thing, the origins of these lines, from the permanent way, to the station buildings, to the rolling stock that ran on them in their heyday, it was all built here in the first place. And Steam, based in one of the work's former engineering shops, showcases this through some excellent storytelling within its unique setting. The museum's trail starts with a display called The Offices. Here you'll learn all about the administration feats of the clerks of the time and how they would make even the most expert of Excel spreadsheet users blush. Meticulous staff inventories, payroll details, and more, all done before the advent of computers. You move on to the general stores, or in its heyday what would have essentially been the GWR's equivalent of Amazon. Anything from engine parts to railway sleepers to station benches to office supplies like pens could be processed and ordered from here. Then you'll start to get towards the nitty-gritty of the construction elements as we pass through to areas like the foundry, the pattern, machine, carriage body and erecting shop displays. It all makes you really appreciate the sheer grit and determination of the men and women who worked here, enduring intense heat, smoke and noise levels that left many of them deaf by the age of 30. It would send a health and safety officer into a meltdown. The recreated boiler shop gives us our first glimpse at a full-size locomotive, or at least what's left of one. This is a 4200 class tank engine, one of the very last to leave the famous Barry scrapyard. Its remains have returned to where they were originally built, and they make for an interesting peek at what locomotive construction would have looked like back in the day. After getting to know some of the behind-the-scenes elements, you get to feast your eyes for the first time at the fruits of the work's completed labour when you're greeted by the rather splendid Caerphilly Castle. Completed for the equivalent of around £1 million in today's money, she was the first completed member of the iconic castle class. Other castles have been preserved and are even still running on the main line today, but this is the only place where you can get up close and personal with this majestic machine at its birthplace. You can also walk underneath the locomotive to inspect and admire all of the different parts of the precision engineering of the Swindon workforce for yourself. A nice touch. Progressing through the trail, you'll learn more about the origins of how the old GWR was built. As a waxwork of Isambard Kingdom Brunel keeps a close eye on you, you'll also cross paths with one of his fabled broad-gauge beasts, North Star. This replica was constructed at the Swindon Works a century ago as a tribute, incorporating some components from the original North Star in its assembly. Entering the main hall, more locomotives can be admired, and they are unmistakably and grandly Great Western. The copper cap chimneys and brass safety valves were Swindon staples, symbols of excellence from the workforce and the pride they took in their finished masterpieces. But the real stars of the show can be found near this wonderful platform display, where you'll see some true icons of steam power. King George V, complete with its bell from its tour of the United States, looks glorious in every aspect. There's a real aura and splendour to number 6000, named after the reigning monarch of the time in 1927 when it was built. After a ban in the late 60s, it was one of the first steam locomotives to run again on British rail tracks. It's a true pioneer, not just for the class of locomotives nicknamed the monarchs of the rails, but a preservation trailblazer for mainline steam as we know it today. Close to the king, you'll find another icon in City of Truro, one of the first man-made machines to break the 100 miles per hour barrier, at least as far as we know. She was preserved as far back as the 1930s due to her historical significance. Like King George V, it's currently enjoying a well-earned rest on static display here for the public to enjoy. There's lots of other things to see and do at the museum, including 2 unique interactive features. You can try your hand at signalling in this demonstration box, which shows you how to keep the trains running across the different lines. If switching points doesn't stir the blood, then perhaps driving a steam engine will. Head over to this excellent footplate simulator to take control of your own locomotive, which even rumbles as you take to the controls to add a great touch of realism. There are other top-notch displays scattered around, beautiful old posters, model railways and other splendid items to view of the GWR's past, and it all looks the part. Now, I've been telling you all about how marvellous this museum is for several minutes, to the point where you'd think this is a paid promotional piece. But this isn't. So in the spirit of balance, putting a critic's hat on, are there some areas that perhaps could be looked at by the museum to create an even better visitor experience? For instance, the section featuring how the GWR was built, etc. Would this perhaps be better suited being shown earlier as you walk through the exhibits? If you're going to start anywhere, would it not make more sense to start from, well, the start? Caerphilly Castle commands a reasonably big area of its own, rightly so, but it seems strange that King George V and City of Truro have been grouped together near the back of the main hall. Could one argue that they deserve greater fanfare and to be featured as more prolific centrepieces? Large parts of the latter history of Swindon Works are largely forgotten or glossed over. Diesel feels like a dirty word within these halls. Apart from some old nameplates and archive video, they have virtually no presence. Although associated with the work's decline, could there be more coverage here? The interactive footplate and signal boxes are fun. Could more items like this be installed for the public to allow them to get even more hands-on? A quick glance at some TripAdvisor reviews reveals mostly positive feedback from visitors, though there are the odd quibbles about parking options and entry fees. There are obviously space, logistical and financial considerations around all of those points, and admittedly they could be considered incredibly harsh when you consider how much there is to see and do here. Where there can be absolutely no doubt is that the storytelling aspect of the museum is absolutely first class. There are interactive prompts featuring hours of archive footage, providing visual and audio aids for the pristine exhibits. Everywhere you look and listen, you feel like you've stepped back in time to Swindon's heyday, albeit without the same eardrum-busting noise levels. The way you build up from the behind-the-scenes elements before coming face-to-face with a completed castle or king adds an extra wow factor for when you do come to greet them. It isn't a collection as large as somewhere like the National Railway Museum in York, and the size of the facility here in one of the old works buildings is but a snapshot of the gargantuan size and scale of the full Swindon Works in its prime. But what the team have done with the space they do have deserves recognition. It's a truly fine blend of storytelling and pleasantly preserved exhibits. There's also a cafe, a gift shop, and a short distance from the museum you also have the Swindon Designer Outlet. This outlet is a big part of the old Swindon Works which has been redeveloped, and there's even another locomotive to view. Ditchit Manor can be found here at the time of this video's publication. With the Steam Museum specifically, this channel's take is that it's a smashing place to visit, a fitting memoir to both the GWR and Swindon's works at large, and certainly up there as being one of the best railway museums in the UK. City of Truro in particular is one of my personal favourite exhibits. It's an engine I've always grown up admiring. Having once been lucky enough to spend an afternoon on the footplate of this legend when it was in working order, it will always hold a special place in my heart. Technically, one of its great rivals in Flying Scotsman holds the official record for breaking the 100 mph barrier, though the GWR and its loyal followers insist that City of Truro's famous run in 1904 broke the ton barrier first. Flying Scotsman itself needs little introduction. Like City of Truro and King George V, it's one of the all-time greats, but it has a rather complicated past, and this video explores why it may be the case that, strange as it may seem, not everyone is a fan of one of the world's most famous locomotives.